Alright, Shalom, Shalom. First and foremost, I'd like to give all praises to our Bashimi Shai, Bashimi Kakadash. Double honors unto the apostles and elders of great milestone, peace and salutations unto the unshine 44,000. So, Brother Kyle here, again here with another lesson for the spirit and power of Yahweh Bashimi Shai. And, I just taking a walk here and I say, it's a thing to make this video here because I was going into this subject here with my wife, because we see the wars that's going on right now, and the main war that's brewing right now is Venezuela and America. Me being in Trinidad, as well as other brothers who, in Trinidad will feel, I shouldn't use the word feel, but we would see, a lot of the conflict, for lack of better words, because yes, we're not directly in the war as yet, because I was actually listening to Big Brother Nagar's video that he made a couple minutes ago, where it is, this guy was speaking on the interview with Kamala, and she was saying that she doesn't know about any war and this and that and all this bag of nonsense, right? Because we know what order she under, right? She knows she wasn't elected, she was selected, and everything she doing is to keep you in a state of calmness, and that within itself is what will lead to disaster, because everybody in a state where it is, as long as the grocery open, clubs open, movies open, beach open, and they could go certain places, they're happy with that. They're happy with that. They tell themselves once they still have jobs, right? For the most part, we know Kamala cut out a lot of that, but we know it are jobs for the most part, and they can make whatever little money they have, and then when Friday come, they drink it out by the bar, do whatever it is, right? So actually, before I read this one, let me read this other precept. Right, so this one here is 1 Thessalonians 5, and I start off verse 1. It says, "But of the times and the season, brethren, ye have no need that I write unto you. For yourselves know perfectly that the day of the Lord so cometh as a thief in the night." And we know that. It's just as the scriptures say, we know perfectly well, right, that the Lord coming like a thief in the night. Because even in the same book of Matthew, which I believe is 24 or 22, 132 chapters, where he talk about the servant, the wicked servant, he get cut asunder because why? He was being lukewarm. Or what is that other scripture, boy, where it say settle on the lease. Yeah, they settle on the lease. So we ought to always have that mindset that, hey, especially this prophecy here, this war could break out at any time. You understand? We know World War III in the midst, it's in the air, right? But we know before that happened, the mark of the beast had to come out, right? So we are aware of what's going on right now. We're not saying that World War III gonna start, but hey, there have been, wars that happening already, but it's not World War III, right? Russia and Ukraine, Israel and Iran, now Venezuela and America. Those are minor wars compared to what's really gonna happen, So it goes on in verse 3, "For when they shall say peace and safety, then sudden destruction cometh upon them, as travail upon a woman with child, and they shall not escape." right? The Lord said they're not going on escape. Because, as I said before, Kamala have them in a state of, relaxation. I think I said it in one of my previous videos from not too long ago. I quoted what, the big brother Kahan said, right? The second in command in our camp. When Trump made a statement saying that there isn't going to be any World War III and it's not going to happen in the Middle East and all these different things. Same thing with Kamala saying how she don't know anything about any war and this and that. When they say these things, the people, the idiotic people who, they choose to remain in a bubble where it is they don't have to believe reality, right? It's like they're choosing to be ignorant. When they, as political people, say these things, they breathe a sigh of relief, and by them doing that, they just setting themselves up more. Because at the end of the day, this is reality, whether you like it or not, right? But they will always have these people in every era. It are the ones who will prepare, the ones who pay attention, the others who will just say, fuck it, If we dead, we dead. And it are the others who will just blatantly refuse to accept reality for what it is. And if you ask me, them, they're more ridiculous than the ones that just say fuck it, Because it's like in our mind, it's like they're not completely casting it out of their mind, but it's like they tell themselves there isn't anything they could do. But we know, we have faith in Yahweh Hashem Yahushai. However, the other ones who just choose to ignore it, it's like they choose to refuse. They refuse to accept reality for what it is, and that is what's going to lead to the demise. You understand? So, let me go to the Matthew 10. Today, Matthew 10 and 16, the subheading says what? A hard road before them. Right? It says, behold, I send you forth as sheep in the midst of wolves. Be ye therefore wise as serpents and harmless as doves. Right? So, what do you think that means? We know what a wolf would do to a lamb anytime he catch it. Because that saying, there's wolves in sheep clothing. Well, we had to be a sheep in wolves clothing. Because we, as the Lord say, we's like lamb to the slaughter. Right? Because remember Yahushua was that sacrificial lamb. So we ought to have that same patience as he did and endurance that he had. As Philippians 2 and 5 say, the mind that in Yahushua Mashiach, let that mind be in you. So knowing that we ought to be more focused and more attentive to what's going on, right? Because why I use the term we is sheep or lamb in wolf's clothing is because we talking the truth. By the end of the day, scripture said don't be over righteous, right? Because we know we still have to go to work, we don't have no might in our hands. So for now, the Lord said, wait ye upon me. So we gotta wait on Yahweh Hashem Yahushai, but we gotta preach the word. That's the orders he give us. So it goes on in verse 17. But beware of men, for they will deliver you up to the councils, and they will scourge you in their synagogues. Right? And ye shall be brought before governors and kings for my sake, for a testimony against them and the Gentiles. And this is the interesting part here. Because as I spoke to my wife and I told her, I say, hey, I say, you see this here is, it's going to get more interesting going on. Because this here, we're speaking about things, talking about the court system and all these different things, right? They're going to bring you up to these things and these high people in authority, right? So it could be judges, whoever it is, police, and you have to answer questions, right? But the Lord say for his name's sake, because remember when you read 2nd Esdras, where it is 2nd Esdras 2, it spoke about the ones who stood so stiffly for the name of the Lord. Why would you have to stand stiffly for the name of the Lord if it's not something you had to endure? That is something to think about. right? So it's just a thought, but just give me a minute here. Slack here.